Hi, everyone. This is Inga Hansen, editor at Metaesthetics Magazine. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about how to move beyond traditional email blasts to increase repeat visits from existing patients. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question bar, and then we will make sure they get answered at the end. Today's webinar is going to be presented by Adam Weinroth. He's a marketing executive, internet product innovator, and the chief marketing officer at eRelevance. eRelevance specializes in marketing automation products and services to help aesthetic practices execute best practice patient marketing campaigns with minimal staff time and effort. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Glad to be presenting the webinar today, and we'll just jump right in. So as she mentioned, I'm Adam Weinroth, and I run marketing here at eRelevance, and all day long what we do is help aesthetic practices get more out of their business, and specifically do more to market to their existing patients to help grow their business. So I'm going to take you through a little bit about what we've learned talking with thousands and thousands of aesthetic practices, and some of the patterns we're seeing in terms of practices being stuck in what they're doing in marketing. We'll explain more what that means, but also not just all the doom and gloom, but what can actually be done about it. So first, to put some medical terminology into this, we like to talk about the marketing misdiagnosis. And one of the big misperceptions that's out there is that you have to get more new patients in order to grow your revenue. So you're trying to grow your practice, you're trying to get your revenue numbers up, you've got to go and get more new patients. That's wrong. It's not correct. It's a misdiagnosis. Another one is that there's a belief or a false conclusion that there's not enough revenue in your existing patient base to actually support growth that you're aiming for. And that's not correct. Another one that we've seen a lot is that, well, we've checked the box on marketing to our existing patients because we're doing email blasting. And that is incorrect. There is so much more that can be done. We talk about the marketing misdiagnosis. There's also a marketing misprescription that goes along with that. And so a lot of times when you come to some of those false conclusions, you say, okay, well, let's invest in advertising so that we can get new patients. Because we've done everything else that we can do with our existing patients, or we're doing everything that we ought to be doing, so let's go get some new patients now. The problem is that to acquire a new aesthetic patient, on average, it costs you about $1,000. And so just some simple math, if let's say you've got a 6,000 patient practice, and you want to grow that by 1,000, you're going to have to spend $1 million on advertising to find new patients based on this benchmark right here of how much it costs to acquire a new patient. So that's expensive, and there's probably not a lot of people listening who are currently or planning to spend $1 million on marketing for that kind of goal. There's also a marketing malpractice, and that is that email blasting and some of the things that practices are doing, things that are within arm's reach that they can, task an office manager or a front desk person with. There's a malpractice that is the right thing to do. And the reason why it's malpractice is because it's old-fashioned and it's fraught with problems. First of all, email blasting, it's actually spamming. And so what you're doing is when you're sending a one-size-fits-all message out to everyone in your practice, it's not relevant to their interests, to their own personal interests. And that's what people expect today. They only want personally relevant information. And because of that, because you're using this tired old tactic from 15 plus years ago, you're actually driving them away and right to your competitors. In addition to that, the average open rate for email is actually less than 20%. So you're not even reaching the other 80% of people. They're not opening the email and getting the message that you're trying to put in front of them. So that's a huge problem there. And then to kind of put a stat on the annoying factor about it, 63% of consumers say that they're annoyed by email blasting. So you're literally turning them off if this is how you're marketing to your existing patients. There's a lot of risk with it. But now let's go for a second opinion. And the second opinion is that you can increase the lifetime value of your existing patients. And what I mean by that is if you were to add up for any given patient all of the visits and all of the dollars that they spent with your practice over the years, the totality of that is their lifetime value. And so there are ways that are not being done by many, many practices to increase the lifetime value of those patients. And many practices are now actually generating tens of thousands of dollars in additional revenue every single month by generating repeat business from their existing patients. So if you think about what if you could get your patient to come in instead of just 1 or 2 or 3 times, what about 6 times over a 2 or 3 or 4 year period? Then you're increasing the lifetime value. And if you do that effectively, and if you do it at scale, and you're doing that in a way that touches your entire patient base, then that is a huge financial opportunity and a huge growth opportunity for the practice. The other important benefit from that is not just the revenue, but you're building stronger relationships with your patients. You're seeing them more often. You're getting to know them better. They're getting to know you better. And so you're cultivating a stronger connection with them. Not only that, you know that a lot of your new patients actually come from referrals. And so the more people you have spending more time with you and more comfortable with you and in a stronger relationship with you, the more likely they are to refer new patients in. So a really important concept. Now, that all sounds great, but the question is, okay, that's great. Let's focus on lifetime value. Why aren't all practices already doing this? Why isn't it just simple and easy? And the answer to that and the whole premise and idea behind this webinar is that they're stuck. And the reason why they're stuck is because usually the person or people who are tasked with engaging existing patients through marketing to let them know about events, to let them know about offers, to let them know about news or new procedures that are being offered, usually it's the office staff that gets tasked with that. But the problem is they are already overwhelmed with work. They don't have the time to do it, and they usually do not have the expertise to move past something as simple as email blasting. And so that's one way of being stuck. The other way of being stuck is that you could say, okay, my staff's time is completely maxed out. They are not equipped in terms of their skills and their expertise to be able to do the marketing well. So I'm going to put this on a consultant. The problem is that if you want to move past email blasting or very basic techniques like posting to your social accounts, you're going to have to pay ratably for all of that work by the consultant. So they start running the meter right from day one. And if you want to get to a more sophisticated place where you're engaging your patients in very effective ways and increasing that lifetime value, it's going to be cost prohibitive through a consultant, which is usually going to charge you by the hour or some version of that. So that's what it's like to be stuck. And here's what it looks like. If you think about this on a 2x2, the east-west axis here is marketing sophistication. So as you want to add more and more capabilities beyond just plain old-fashioned email blasting, you're going to get into more sophisticated territory. You're going to be doing more things. You're going to be utilizing data more. You're going to be doing segmentation. You're going to be finding people across different channels. You're going to be relying on analytics and automation a lot more. And as you move eastward on that axis, on the north-south axis, that's when it takes more time and cost. So literally, in order to get more sophisticated about your marketing and to get out of that stuck position, you have to spend more time and money, and that's a big problem. So first, let's talk about expertise. If you think about someone who is not a trained expert marketer doing your marketing for you, it kind of makes sense. So you look at this person who, she's the practice manager at a cosmetic surgery practice. She knows about QuickBooks. She knows about practice management. She knows about patient scheduling, records management, checking people in and out, HIPAA, electronic healthcare records, things like that. When you look at a marketer, they've got a different background. They've got a different skill set. They know how to do things like lead generation. They know how to use different kinds of creative tools. They know how to use marketing analytics 6 ways from Sunday. They know about campaign execution. They know about how to publish content, marketing content. They know about marketing automation. And those are all the kinds of things that you need to be able to do in order to market effectively. So this is what the expertise gap in being stuck looks like. Another one is about relevance. So if you think about email blasting, you're not really personalizing that communication, and so you're not really connecting well with them. So the more modernized approach to it is doing something called targeting, which is picking specific groups of patients within the database to target specific offers and information to that are relevant to their interests. So if you think about, say, males over the age of 35 who have an interest in body contouring, you might send them one set of messages or one offer or one piece of information or educational content versus females who are over 40 who have an interest in wrinkle reduction. You might send everything for more general kinds of information. So for everyone, you might announce a new service, or you might talk about an event or opening up a second location. And so when you're sending out relevant communication like this and being thoughtful about who's getting what according to their interests, that actually drives an 18-fold revenue increase over mass communication like email blasts. So this is a big gap in terms of how practices are currently doing it versus how it's been established is the optimal way to do it. Another one is one-size-fits-all communication. So if you think about that actual message that people are getting and you think about what's in it and what they see and what they're going to respond to, it's one thing in this example to just say, special offers, we can get you results, show a woman, show a few product and procedure names, but it's entirely different to try and cater to a specific group of people. So here's an example with showing something that's promoted for males. Here's another one that's promoted to potentially couples, and then here's another one that's focused on skin cancer and disorders of that nature. And so these are all very different, even though the promotion that I showed you at the beginning here was meant to be, hey, here's everything under the sun for everyone. This, as you can see, is much more tailored. It's focused on specific topics for specific kinds of people with specific interests. I also want to talk about reach. So I mentioned this before, but email blasts are only reaching about 20% of patients if you're sending them. So the challenge for a lot of practices is, how do I go across different channels? As we all know, we've got many different apps and devices, and our attention is fragmented between our computer versus our iPad when we're on the couch versus our phone when we're on the go, and all different channels, whether that's just online through websites, or whether it's through Facebook or Instagram. Our consumer is increasingly spread across all those places, and so the challenge is, how do I reach them through whatever screen that they're looking at that moment, and how do I have that happen in a very integrated way? And so the goal is to really digitally surround people, and by going multi-channel and by linking those channels together and by being consistent and digitally surrounding those patients, you're then increasing your reach from 20% that you get with email blasting to 80 to 90% or more in many cases by connecting with them in the ways that they want to be reached and where they are spending their time at that moment. And so one stat that's here from Gartner, which is a technology research company, is that lead generation campaigns that incorporate multiple digital channels all together in an integrated way are going to outperform a single or two-channel campaign by 300%. And it makes sense, because you're reaching people, you're reaching more people, but you're also reaching each of those people who you are reaching in more places. And so you're able to get more bites at the apple. So I showed you this before about the north, south, and east, west axis, and where on this map a practice would feel stuck, because as they move up in marketing sophistication, they're moving up in time and cost as well. What people are really looking for, and what practices are starting to come around to, is the idea of driving for more marketing sophistication while keeping the time and cost constant, and so that they're not ringing up a bunch of consulting fees or ringing up a bunch of marketing technology fees. They're looking for a fixed cost and a fixed and low time investment in order to be able to do more sophisticated marketing and get 18x of a return based on highly relevant information going to the right people, and then tripling the effectiveness of that by reaching people across many different channels. So this is sort of a goal that many practices are now moving towards. And a lot of that is being reached by what we see as a collection of modern marketing standards. And so what this means is a comprehensive monthly marketing program that's aimed exclusively at your existing patients so that you can generate that repeat business. And there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all formula for this, and it's a new area, but it's one that many of the most successful practices are moving to very rapidly. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about the sort of the 6 pillars of what that looks like so that you can be thinking about, okay, well, if I need to adopt something like this so that I can grow repeat business and grow my revenue, these are the things that I have to make sure I'm covered on, and these are the standards that I should be aiming for. So first is obviously relevant offers to existing patients, being able to choose specific groups of patients, targeting, being able to digitally surround patients across many different channels. We find that there's a marketing rule of 7, which is that you have to touch someone across at least 7 different channels. You have to hit them 7 times in order for them to really engage and really respond. Another important part of this is generating responses to specific offers. So not just telling the world about the latest blah, blah, blah that is now being offered, but giving people a real and concrete offer in order to respond to. Also measuring the actual business impact. So it's not just about getting clicks and getting people to generate impressions or getting people to open emails or whatever it might be. It's about walking that all the way to the bank and understanding, okay, that's great that I got all these clicks. That's great that I got all this engagement happening online with the patient marketing that we're doing. But how does that turn into actual revenue? How does it turn into consults? How does it turn into scheduled appointments? How does it turn into actual revenue? And then the last one is making sure that you're not overburdening your existing staff who are not trained marketing experts with all of these things that actually need to be done in order to run an effective patient marketing program. And then I also wanted to show, I talked a little bit about going multi-channel. I talked a little bit about providing relevant offers. I talked a little bit about generating responses to specific offers. I wanted to show you what that looks like and what the practices we work with are doing. So on the left here, you see a couple of examples of email where it's partly educational, but also we get into specific offers that are related to those. So you're reaching them in email, you're reaching them in social, not just on Facebook, but on Instagram too, where a lot of patients are spending their time. Also being able to reach out to them through text and push notifications, and then also being able to engage through conversational technology, where there's automated response and dialogue that can happen through an app. That helps to educate people and helps to find out their interests and helps to present the right offers and the right information and education to them over time, still building that relationship. And all of that driving heavily to a lot of times what are called landing pages that are on the web. And so this is what lets people sign up, specify what they're interested in, and get in contact with you and respond to a specific offer, and helping you measure that on the back end. So, in the aesthetic business, before and after is a really important concept, and so I thought it would be important to frame the differences that you would see before you're doing an effective patient marketing program to generate repeat business versus after. And so before, when practices are not doing this, when they're not running an effective patient marketing program, maybe they're stuck with email blasting, they're spending lots of money on advertising to try and get new patients to make up the difference and not seeing much in the way of results. After, they're able to cut down their advertising budget, which, as we talked about, it costs on average about $1,000 to acquire a new aesthetic patient. So they're able to cut down that very expensive budget down to the bone. Before, they're not re-engaging patients enough to get them back into the office. After, they're able to generate dozens or hundreds of hand raisers with every campaign that they run to their existing patients. Before, they're not measuring actual business results of marketing. They're just looking at things like clicks, or maybe trying to get a vague sense of when someone walks into the office or sets up an appointment, they tell them that they saw it on a billboard, or maybe they saw it in a print ad, or maybe it was an online ad. They're not quite sure. That makes it really hard to judge the actual impact on business results. After, when you're running a program like this that has all those channels tightly woven together and everything tracked in a watertight way, you're measuring business results down to the scheduled appointment, so you know which campaign and which channel gets credit for that particular appointment that was scheduled and those dollars that were rung at the register as a result. Before, a practice would only be reaching 20% of patients, best case, through email blasting and probably not doing a good job of it. After, you'd be reaching up to 95% of patients across 7 or more different digital channels with relevant offers. Before, you might be distracting your staff with marketing work, which they're not qualified to do. And after, you would be able to reclaim that time and enable them to focus on patient care and experience when they're in the office. So I thought that would be important to kind of show the contrast between doing it one way today that's very limited, and there are seemingly not a lot of options and alternatives out there to doing it better without spending a lot more time and resource on doing it in a much more sophisticated way. But if you can find the way to do it in a more sophisticated way while maintaining the time and cost and putting a limit on that, then you're able to get better results. And that's something that we've seen happen quite a bit with many aesthetic practices. So that is what I have for you today, and I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was great. And we have a couple questions that have come in, and if people have more questions, do feel free to type those in, and we will share them with Adam. One basic question was, what % of your overall marketing budget should be for internet-based efforts?
That's a really great question. So if you think about some of the different components of the marketing mix, for online marketing, there are a lot of practices who that's all they're doing. Things like print and billboards and radio ads and TV ads, they're not cheap, and they're really difficult to measure. And so as it happens, online marketing, because everything's sort of able to be tracked and you're able to get a direct response to online advertising, it's just a much more accountable medium. Now that doesn't mean that it's entirely wasteful to run billboard ads or print ads where it makes sense, but you have to do those selectively. You have to ask for the media person who's selling you those. You really need to hold them accountable for giving you an understanding of who exactly these things are reaching. So if they just say, oh, it's a billboard and approximately 68,000 cars drive past this every day, that doesn't give you a great sense that you're reaching your target. You have to really hold them accountable for mapping what it is that they're offering you in terms of their audience that they're promising with the audience that you're trying to reach. You're not going to offend anyone. It's okay to tell them this is how the kind of people that we want to reach. This is how many of them we feel like we need to reach. What can you do for me, and what can you do to prove it, and what can you do to show me that it works? Those are questions that are great for kind of offline media sellers to be required to show you and to answer for. But it's also a reason why a lot of budget, and I would say, from a marketing standpoint, we're seeing at least 2/3 now being done online among practices like this.
Great. And somebody was wondering, how do I go about measuring actual bookings from each campaign that I do?
Right. So the short answer is that you need something that that career marketers use all the time, which is something called a marketing attribution model. And what that does is it's all the instrumentation and technology behind the scenes that lets you track where someone started, and they might have a meandering kind of online journey, but being able to track where they started for an online activation that you're running, and then maybe there was a second touch or a third touch that happened on different channels, and then ultimately which one of those channels resulted in the response. And so there's all kinds of like tracking codes and things like this that you need to set up. And quite frankly, healthcare practices most of the time don't have that kind of marketing capability in-house, if they have any marketing capability in-house. And so that's why we encourage them to find the right partner or solution that's probably not in the building that can do all of that. But the name for that is a marketing attribution model, and it's something that you need if you want to track what results the marketing activities that you're doing are actually driving.
And in terms of the targeted email blast, do you recommend stopping like a monthly practice newsletter? Should those be discontinued completely or just added to?
It depends on how those are being done. So if you're doing any level of segmentation and you really are tailoring messages to people that have certain characteristics or that have shown interest in certain topics, and you're doing some significant things to provide a more personalized experience, then it's worth continuing, but also adding to, because again, email is only going to get you so far. It's only going to get you roughly, 20% of the way there, best case. And so you have to do more no matter what. But if you are going to keep your email program, make sure that it's targeting specific groups of people and you understand what they're interested in, and you're tailoring those communications based on what you know about them. I would say if you're not doing that, if you're just doing what we sometimes call the spray and pray approach, where everyone in the whole practice database gets the exact same thing, and it's not tailored to their interest, then that's essentially spamming, and it's potentially driving your patients away. People do not like that, and it annoys them, and it will leave a bad taste in their mouth about your practice and your brand.
Terrific. And then we had a question about integrating your social media channels. Should they be sharing posts through all the media channels, or should I be doing original content for each?
You can share some of the same topics. There's no reason you shouldn't just have them be different just so they're different. The reasons why they should be different are because maybe you have character limits, or maybe you have format limitations, and so you have to change them up at some level so that they fit appropriately. There also might be a little bit different of a community dynamic. So for instance, maybe on your Facebook page you've built a real kind of engaging dialogue-based community, and there's a lot of conversation that's happening there. People know each other. You might be posting something there that has a very different tone or feel or packaging than what you might post on, say, Twitter or somewhere else, where maybe it's going to maybe a more anonymous set of people. So I would say that keep it as consistent as you can. For different groups. I would also say that Facebook, in case you didn't know, lets you do some level of targeting, so you can tailor the post that you're putting out to specific groups of people, and that's a useful tool if you have the time and the expertise to do that level of targeting. Terrific.
And the last question we had, or I'm sorry, now another one came up, but a couple people were asking whether this presentation will be available to review and to share, and it will in fact be posted up at metaestheticsmagazine.com/webinar. And so you can, it'll be up there within a day or two, so you're welcome to share that with people. And I do have a last question that just came in asking about how eRelevance as a company charges for marketing help. Is it per project? Is it a monthly? Is there a commitment, a time commitment?
Yes, so we work with practices on an ongoing basis, and we do pilot programs in some cases that are shorter term. But most of the customers that we work with us on an ongoing basis. And the reason why is because by following a lot of what I showed you here, we generate actual results that end up being a lot more than they're spending with us. And so it's just additional revenue for them with a low cost associated with it, and that their staff isn't really having to bother with. And so there's a lot of those benefits. So most of our customers are long-term customers, and we do a lot of annual contracts, but we do also offer a way to start in a pilot model that's a shorter-term commitment.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Adam, for the presentation, and thank you so much for everyone who attended. And again, you see Adam's email up here, so feel free to follow up with him if you come up with any questions after the presentation. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.